Quite a lot of stuff has happened in the Warhammer space this weekend. Now, if you're not tapped into Warhammer on a day-to-day basis on Twitter or on TikTok, you might have missed it. But there was a leak for the new Custodes Codex that's coming with 10th edition on Saturday, and it is going to change some things about that faction. This has been a contentious reveal, and not everybody is happy about it. But I'm HoodGuard, and this is your Warhammer Monday wrap-up. Let's get into it.
There is no peace amongst the stars, for in the grim, dark future, there is only war.
Alright, so on Saturday I was scrolling through TikTok and Twitter, just looking for ideas for some videos coming up. I was also at the Warhammer store at the time. I generally go there to read, or if there's pre-orders that I might want. And the entire time I'm there, scrolling on Twitter and TikTok, I'm debating with myself whether I want to pre-order the Orc or Custodes Codex. I don't generally buy codexes unless it's for a faction I really like, or I know that there's a piece of lore coming out that's going to be important in that codex. Now don't get me wrong, I love the Custodes. You see me rocking the Golden Boys merch right now. But I was ready to wash my hands of both of those pre-orders and just look forward to next week. Until I started seeing some commotion on Twitter surrounding a leaked paragraph of a codex. So let's read through that so you can see what's going on, and then we'll come back. The first leaked paragraph goes as follows. Custodian Custodes Teravalia Kesh stood upon the bridge of a Cobra-class destroyer, named Vigilant Flame. The warship belonged to the mighty Battlefleet Solar. She lingered in the shadows at the back of the bridge, positioned at a spot where she could observe the actions of every crew member, be they in the instrumentation pits, at the armament shrines, or, in the case of Shipmaster Lethwick, stood ramrod straight before his command throne. Now I read that without any hints or inflections, so you might have missed it. And I did the very first time I read it. I didn't know what everybody was up in arms about. But the pronouns of Custodian Custodes Teravalia Kesh are she, her. And as soon as I realized that, I stopped in my tracks. Obviously, since the inception of Warhammer, every custodian that has ever been mentioned has been a man. It even says in earlier codex that the sons of nobles were given up in order to be turned into custodians. But the entire process of how they take a human baby and turn them into one of the golden demigods of the Emperor has always been shrouded in mystery. In fact, there's a paragraph in the 8th edition Codex for Custodes that kind of talks about this. After claiming that the sons of noble houses were given up to the Custodian Guard for recruitment, this paragraph follows. The Custodes also seek out suitable candidates by other means, or encounter them by chance on their missions to protect the throne world. What is clear is that none besides the Custodes themselves truly know what criteria they require. How a custodian is made is an arcane and ancient process born out of the mind of the Emperor himself, made up of decades of alchemical augmentation, psychological and cognitive conditioning, and mimetic training. That was a lot of words to say we don't know how custodians are really made, or at least have never taken the time to detail it out. I just wanted to read both of those paragraphs to give you context on what's going on and the kind of history behind the Custodian's creation. Because now that we have our background, we can talk about how this affects the community as a whole, how it affects the lore. Just to get my 2 cents out of the way, I am all for this. I think because the Custodians are handcrafted from babies, it doesn't matter if they're a boy or a girl. Custodians do not use gene seed like Space Marines do. Now, female Space Marines are an entirely different video, but there are a lot of mentions in different codexes about how gene seed does not work for women. I personally think that's some BS, but again, we can talk about that later. There is, however, nothing in the Custodians lore that expressly prohibits women from being custodians. Now, again, of course, there is the line that said that noble houses gave up their sons. But it didn't say only sons, and nowhere in the lore has it ever said that the process of creation for a Custodes does not work on women. Now, I can already hear detractors yelling at me saying, what about Sisters of Battle? What about Sisters of Silence? The Sisters of Battle are not one of the 2 superhuman factions of the Imperium. And the Sisters of Silence are not the Custodians. They fall under the Custodian banner in the tabletop, but not at all in the lore. They are their own distinct faction. And there are some people who are also upset just because it's a retcon in general. I think Games Workshop retcon stuff all the time. From the inclusion of Alanius Person in the Perpetuals in the Horus Heresy series to the time period adjustment in the Dark Imperium series, there have always been a lot of retcons in Warhammer 40,000. And this isn't taking away anything from any other faction. There are just now women in the Custodian Guard. And according to this tweet that was released yesterday by Games Workshop, there have always been female Custodian Guards. The immediate negative response to that tweet was people trying to show Games Workshop that they were wrong about their own lore, bringing up all types of codexes and passages from them, trying to show them that it has always said noble sons being recruited into the Custodians. And I think those people are misunderstanding what that tweet means. First, they're establishing that this is a retcon. They're saying that these women have always been there, we may not have written about them, but they have been there. And to their credit, there is enough plausible deniability for that to be possible. What they're also doing is embedding it into the foundations of the lore. I think it's easier story-wise and also going to be more readily accepted by the wider fandom if you kind of weave it through the base of the lore instead of trying to do an entirely new thing. And what I mean by that is that it's a lot easier to believe that under some of those silent golden helms that there are women, rather than trying to maybe say that Call made up an entirely new process for creating women Custodes. Now, is this the best way that it could have come out? Absolutely not. One, this was a leak, and I hate leaks in general. I don't even really like talking about leaks. And two, I personally would have liked a novel that explained this new retcon. There's definitely some explaining to do whether you like this change or not. Now, if you're looking to find out more about this change, I believe the entire short story from the Codex is somewhere on Twitter. It's a 2-page spread talking about Custodian Kesh running a blood game. Now, looking ahead lore-wise, I'm trying to see where exactly they're going to fit in, or what novel they're going to be announced in. What is going to be their first narrative foray? Now, if I were a betting man, I would say they probably come in Morvenval's Spear of Faith. This is a new book coming out by Dr. Jude Reed, who also wrote Creed Ashes of Cadia. It's going to focus on the Abbess Sanctorum, the leader of the Adeptus Sororitas. But why do I think that female Custodes are going to be kind of debuted here? Well, first, the most obvious and visual reason, women in golden armor using spears. But a more serious reason is that Morvenval is a High Lord of Terra. And if anything, they are the humans that interact with the Custodians the most. But that's just my guess, we'll see if time proves me right. Overall, I think this change is really cool. I appreciate all the artwork that has already come out for it. I think it's a small, subtle change that doesn't really affect the lore all that much and makes some people feel a little bit more included. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But let me know in the comments section, what do you all think of this new change? Are you on board for Femstodes? Make sure to subscribe and hit that like button, and I'll see you all in the next one.